One of the things that we've talked about, and I want to bring it up and talk about it a little bit more, is that with all this chaos in the lower chamber, in the upper chamber, that would be the Senate, the spirit has been one of cooperation, surprisingly. This week, President Biden and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell traveled to McConnell's native Kentucky to tout the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act passed last year and the benefits of working across the aisle.
We disagree on a lot of things, but here's what matters. He's a man of his word. He's willing to find common ground to get things done for the country.
We all know these are really partisan times, but I always feel no matter who gets elected, once it's all over, we ought to look for things we can agree on and try to do those.
So Yasmin, this is the person that you're covering every day, President Biden. What was going into the president's thinking? Take us a little bit behind the scenes about why the White House thought this was a good idea and what they think this might, in some ways, lead to down the line.
I mean, I think the timing could not have worked out better for them. I don't know that they expected the backdrop to be quite that much of a split screen, but there are a couple elements to this. One is that President Biden and Mitch McConnell are actually like each other. Even though they disagree on most things, they actually have a long relationship and they like each other, and they're both from this era where Republicans and Democrats tried to get things done together. And so I think for them, I know from Mitch McConnell's side, this bridge, nothing was more symbolic of crumbling infrastructure in the U.S. and he could tout this. And I think also for both of them, they're trying to show, look, we can still work together. We can still get things done. Look at this clown show. For people who are reasonable, actually, the two parties can still come together. And we know that they had been looking for some time for some type of event, some type of bill where they could showcase bipartisanship and try to show people that Congress and the presidency can still function together.
And Allie, I want to come to you. What's your sense of why this trip was important to both of these sides, especially as you're up on the Hill? I wonder if House members, if they can even think about the other chamber, what they've been saying.
Certainly nobody was talking about Mitch McConnell if they were thinking about him. But I think that Yasmin is right, that the goal for Biden and McConnell both is to show that this place can still work. Biden is still, in many ways, the same man who served in the Senate for decades, a creature of Congress. It's something that he regularly talked about on the campaign trail. So this makes a lot of sense. I do think as we look at the next few months and certainly the next 2 years, we are going to see two very different theories of how to be a Republican in the post-Trump era coming out of Congress based on which chamber you're looking at. Mitch McConnell had a very different lesson that he learned from these midterms than Kevin McCarthy did. McConnell's lesson was the chaos didn't work, and he was using chaos as a stand-in both for Trump and also for the literal word chaos. What McCarthy and House Republicans are doing this week only underscores the idea that they are going to represent messiness and dysfunction, even as they try to spin it as this just being the way that they're going to move forward on a path to governing. So this is, I think, what it's going to be for the next 2 years, showcasing two entirely different versions of republicanism in Washington.
It's such a good point. And Carl, I have to ask, what do you think Mitch McConnell gets out of this? We kind of, in some ways, it makes sense what President Biden gets out of it. What's McConnell doing?
I will say first that nothing brings politicians together like hundreds of millions of dollars for public works projects.
You mean pork?
Yeah. Mitch McConnell is, he would not like me saying this, but he's nearing the end of his career. And I think Mitch McConnell is in legacy building mode. And he wants to be seen as somebody who was able to work across party lines. He also was famously in the past a big person directing a lot of money to Kentucky. He helped Biden a lot these last 2 years. They got some legislation done. They supported Ukraine together. But I think that Mitch McConnell just really relished this moment, what was going on in the House and Trump not having much influence. And here's Mitch McConnell and the president and several other senators. They're celebrating their work together. It was really something. I did a piece on the last time that the House had this big, long, drawn-out vote 100 years ago, and it was eerily similar. The Senate also then basically saw what the House was doing, immediately recessed and left town and let the House carry on. So it's basically a great parallel.
Wow. I was going to ask you about the history of this. Are there any parallels that you want to point out when you think about sort of the time that we're living in 1923?
Well, the interesting thing was the fight was sort of about the same thing. It was about progressive Republicans at that time trying to get more power. They wanted to offer more amendments. They wanted more committee slots. I said, you know, there's a lot that's happened in 100 years, but Congress is kind of the same. It's just, I want my share.
There's a battle underway for the soul of the Republican Party. It's been underway for some time. President Trump, when he won election, defined the Republican Party in a new way and has really been the face of the party since then. But this next presidential election is going to be a battle that will play out the same forces that we see playing out in the House this week.
It's such an important point, and I wanted to ask you, do you think that there's any chance that we get big bills? We're looking already at the idea of government shutdowns and raising the debt ceiling, but I wonder, do you think there's any chance that we get the sort of big bills that Biden and McConnell were touting?
No. I mean, I think if we're lucky, we'll fund the government and we'll raise the debt ceiling. But the idea that some of the big legislation that has passed in the past 2 years can make it through this House, I think is unlikely.
I agree with that. I mean, we'll be lucky if we don't have a default on the federal government.
Is that what you're hearing from White House sources too?
Absolutely. I mean, they've been worried from before November that if House Republicans took control, budgets would be a really big deal. And of course, that's why you saw the White House and the Senate, including Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, wanting to do an omnibus at the end of December to fund the government for a full year, as opposed to bring this up again in 2 months because of exactly what we're seeing play out this week.
And Allie, in the last 30 seconds we have here, tell us a little bit about what's coming up on your side of the Pennsylvania Avenue here.
Hopefully they do their work tonight. That's the goal of Team McCarthy. They think that they're there, though they can't quite explain how they'll get there. I think part of the reason that we don't have that answer yet is because many of these 6 holdouts love the drama. They want to be able to do it on the floor. And so that's what we're waiting to see. This story, as it has all week, unfolding in real time for all of us together.